Hi all, in the last episode I transformed a small mushroom island into this super detailed custom island with my starter house on top, as I wanted to make sure I got lots of build projects done in this world right from the start. However, that doesn't mean there aren't any redstone builds that need to be made. In this episode I'm going to be focusing on building 2 essential farms which should get me many items I need, as well as enable me to finally get a max set of gear. But first I set off collecting all of the items I would need for both farms so that I could jump straight into building them. These included getting stone and cobblestone, string, slime balls, quartz and magma blocks. Whilst mining for them I even managed to find myself my first piece of ancient debris, but we'll be getting more of them later. I also mined up quite a bit of redstone and iron ore, which surprisingly still wasn't enough as I ended up going back for more iron. All this work was draining the durability on my tools, so I periodically headed back to the drowned farm I made in the previous episode to use as a makeshift XP farm to repair those that had mending on. On my way to getting dark oak for some easy wood, I even stumbled upon a woodland mansion where I was able to pick off the 2 evokers and get myself some totems, which will certainly make life a little easier further down the road. Finally, I also needed to collect a bunch of sand for glass, so I got about 3 shulker boxes. However, with a future project in mind for later on in the video, I also wanted to get an additional 5 more boxes of the stuff, so in the end I ended up digging out a pretty large portion of the desert. Okay, so I believe I've collected all of the things that I should need for this project, and now I just need to find myself a witch hut. Alright, well I finally found the nearest witch hut in this area, and unfortunately it's still 6,000 blocks away, but that's how these things go. Now I did just have an error with my recording software, so you missed the bit where I managed to get myself this black cat, which is pretty awesome as you only get 1 per witch hut that spawns. Now I've also set to work marking out the floors and where they need to be on this structure so that I can begin building the farm. And to do that I used a mod called Mini HUD, and what that enables me to do is actually show the bounding box of various structures in the game. Now although this isn't 100% useful or even necessary, I think it's pretty cool and it enables you to visualize this kind of thing here, which also makes it pretty easy to show you exactly how you can do this yourself. So as would be pretty obvious, the back corner of the witch hut here is 1 corner, but then the other one is actually all the way up to the edge of the balcony here, not the roof itself. And there is one more thing that I need to take into consideration, and that is making sure that there are no mobs that can spawn in this entire area. And to do that I'm also using another mini HUD feature, which is this bad boy right over here. So this is a 128 by 128 radius sphere, which is centered around this 1 block here that I placed, which is going to act as the AFK spawning platform in just the right spot for this farm. And what this shows us is basically where all of the mobs can and can't spawn, so we want to make sure that nothing can spawn within the area of this sphere. Now at first glance this would appear to be a very easy thing to do. You would just want to remove a couple blocks here and there and maybe remove some trees, and theoretically it should be job done. However, nowadays we have drowns that spawn in the game, so that means I have to clear up all of this water over here, as this is going to be an issue for us. And usually that's a pretty easy thing to do, as the swamps are typically a very shallow area and can usually be pretty easy to clear. However, I did get a little bit unlucky here with this really deep water patch. So as you can see, the sphere doesn't actually go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to use this to my advantage and recreate the sphere itself out of dirt blocks, just to really effectively raise the seabed level up and make it easier to use sponges to clear all of the water out so that I can then work on the farm itself. And to do this, I'm going to be using the Litematica mod, which enables you to place in schematics, which acts as a perfect guide to whatever you're building. And as you can see, I've already placed in this one in exactly the right spot. So all I need to do now is I need to head out, get myself some sponge, clear up this area, and I can begin building this farm. Finally, once I finished clearing the entire area, I set about digging a small hole for the storage system at the bottom of the witch hut to fit into. However, once I flooded the entire area, I decided to go back and actually make it circular, as I figured it would look a little bit better if it followed the water line around the entire farm. And now it was time to get to the build itself. This is a design by Ilmango, and I will leave a link in the description to his original video. I have tweaked it slightly, and I've also added my own storage system beneath, as I don't think the original included anything like that. So if you're interested in getting your hands on the schematic of the version I've used in this video, there will also be a link to that in the description. The way this farm works is that each of the spawning platforms are made up of rows of regular blocks and soul sand blocks, and then you have a clock that's shifting them from side to side, so that once the witches spawn, they actually get stuck inside of the block, as there's just a 1 pixel gap between the two of them, and that causes them to fall through the different layers until they basically just get shuffled into one spot, where I use entity cramming to kill them. Alright, well it is all finished and look how awesome this thing looks. I think flooding it in the end was such an excellent idea. And I'm really happy I went with expanding this lower section right here, as it all ties together really nicely. Now if you're planning on building this in your own world, there are a couple of things that you'll want to do besides actually building the thing itself. And the first one is right up here by this clock. You want to make sure that there are 4 items in here for the clock to run, and then go ahead and switch this on whenever you're using it. And then of course finally there is an item filter here, where you want to make sure you have 3 items in here that aren't being sorted, and then 18 more. And of course you'll only need 1 for each of these right here, and you can see the 4 that I'm sorting. Anything else that ends up in here is going to get deleted in this compact design here, which sends the items into a cauldron that has lava in it. And then of course I do have 4 shulker boxes down here already, waiting for some items. However, that is pretty much the extent of all of the empty boxes that I have left. So I can't really properly test this design yet, and I don't have a shulker box farm just yet, as I'm not quite ready to build it. So what I'm going to do is just quickly head over to the end and grab a few more to put in the system, and then we can test just how efficient this thing is. Alright, well I've AFK'd here for around an hour, and honestly I don't know what to expect. I haven't even really tested this thing, so we're going to jump down here and see what we can find. Hopefully, yep, there should be some witches dying down here. Now also remember to place in the 24 minecarts, otherwise it is going to take a while for this to work. Now I am wondering if we actually have any full shulkers, which I doubt. Yep, however... Alright, well I have to admit that's a lot less than I was expecting, but it's certainly going to do for this single player world. How much this farm produces really doesn't matter too much to me, as I don't mind AFKing for a long time, something like overnight in this world, and it also doesn't really matter how much redstone we get right now, as I've already collected all of the resources I'll be needing to make this next farm. And if you haven't guessed it already, this is going to be a Pigman gold farm, and it also doubles up as an XP and bartering farm. And funnily enough, this is another design by Ilmango, and once again I have tweaked it quite a bit. A lot of the tweaks that I made to this and also the other one is actually a lot of just replacing the blocks to make it very survival friendly. So instead of having white concrete or something like that as a building block, I like to use stone bricks, as that's really easy to get hold of. And then, you know, simple things like making sure that all of the wooden components are just made out of oak makes it really simple to put together. Now, if you're planning on building this yourself, you want to make sure that it is, of course, at the very top of the world, as you don't want any mobs spawning below. And then you also want to make sure that it's in the nether wastes biome. Now, I got quite lucky, as in my world at 0, is the correct biome, so that's pretty cool. If I ever have a nether hub or something like this, I could actually include the storage as part of it. Whilst building this, you'll also see that I did struggle quite a bit with many ghasts that spawned. That's kind of unavoidable, honestly, unless you made some kind of a mob switch. I actually figured after I had made the first few floors of this farm that all of the pigmen that spawned would fill up the mob cap and stop them from spawning, but in the end that didn't end up happening, so you'll see a lot of scenes of me flying off and trying to kill a ghast which is blowing up what I'm building. And that is just one of the many reasons that this took much longer to make, so I hope you enjoy the time lapse. Well, here it is. As you can see, it is much larger than the previous farm we made, and this certainly took a lot longer to make as well. It felt like constructing the roof and these magma layers took like an eternity, I'm not gonna lie. But here it is, it's finally finished, and I'm really glad we now have both a functional XP farm and also a functional gold and bartering farm. This thing is a beast. We've also got the enchanting setup over here so that I can enchant all of my gear. And before I get round to that, I'm actually going to talk you through some of the things that you might want to make sure you do if you're planning on using the schematic and also constructing this in your world, plus also just explain a little bit about how this works. So first of all, there's a small clock down here. You want to make sure there's one item in one of these hoppers and then 4 in these droppers over here, and that will create a kind of clock. And then there's also another clock somewhere down here. Aha, here it is. And you want to make sure there are 9 items in this one. And then it's mostly just a matter of filling in filters. So the ones that we have underneath here are actually double speed item sorters. So you want to make sure that these 2 are filled up with rotten flesh. And then this one right here is, as you can see. And these ones are fairly similar. If I just fly over onto one of them right here, you can see that you've got gold nuggets and then gold ingots, and it's the same kind of system here. You get 2 on each side, so in total there's 8 or 16 of them, and you want to make sure that the gold ingot is always on the outside one and the gold nuggets are on the inside, and that will just make sure that all of the hoppers actually align correctly. And then under here we have this big shulker box loader, which is a double speed loader that is for all of the gold nuggets that we get. And what you want to do, similar to the other one, is make sure the bottom 2 are filled up. And then that final one over here is a little bit more complicated, as you want to make sure you've got your nuggets, you've got 60 placement items, 2 non-stackables, and then this here is the trick that this uses, and that is a clever trick that enables you to take cursed books and actually combine them. To do this, I headed over to one of the nearest villages I could find and tried to get myself one of the vanishing books. In the process, I actually found a mending villager, and then later on I found an even cheaper mending villager, so I'll certainly or potentially be using him later on. But I did eventually find one. Although I didn't have enough emeralds, I went ahead and traded with a Fletcher, just using some sticks from nearby trees to get myself the emeralds I needed, and then of course I got those books. And here's where the magic lies. You can actually combine those 2 books in a grindstone, and it combines them just as you see here. And what this enables us to do is create what's called an overstacked filter, and that's basically because a non-stackable item, like this sword for example, has the equivalent weight of a stack of items, which means this has the weight of 2 stacks of items, and that basically just allows us to have an extremely low number in here, as well as a couple of other features which I'm not going to go too deep into, but you can research that for yourself. But if you was wondering how to make that, that is how you do it. And then of course we have more filters here. This is very similar to what we had before. These are all of the bartering items. So down here we've got the storage for the full boxes of gold nuggets, and then these will be full boxes of the items that you select to keep from the bartering. The bartering gives you loads of different items, but I don't really need most of them. I'm going to show you the ones that I keep. Of course, the nether quartz, really important, and gravel is a really great one to keep for concrete, but then the rest is kind of up to you. I think that obsidian, leather and ender pearls are really useful items to have lots of, so I am sorting these out, but if you want to change or add on some more of your own, you can do that. And the filters are all as you would expect, except for the ender pearls, as you need slightly less placement items. And so I think that does it for all of the technical aspects of this. If you want to switch the farm on, it's this lever right here, and this lever controls this mechanism. This farm is so good that it actually produces more XP than you can pick up, and long term, if you were to AFK this overnight for example to get loads of items, it would actually start to lag or crash your game due to the amount of XP there is. So this has that little clock that I showed previously, which basically just dispenses lava every now and then, deleting the XP and just making sure it doesn't crash your game. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this actually works. It's pretty self-explanatory. You know, it's a gold farm. You've got all of these spawning platforms around here. They're made of magma blocks, so that anything that isn't the pigman will die. And they all spawn on there, and as you can see, we've got trapdoors to trick them into falling down, so that once you hit one of them, they all come after you, they all fall down, and they continue coming after you, because we've got these guys on the sides here, which alert the new ones that spawn to your presence, and then they all follow like a herd of sheep. Now what happens is once you turn the farm on, it basically starts a big clock. Everything here runs on a clock, and what these segments do is push all of the items and the XP down through here, especially using sticky slime blocks to push all of them really far towards the center, and then before the items get to the center, they get picked up through minecarts in here. You want to make sure that you put these in as well. There should be 3 on these ice blocks here. 1, 2, 3. One of them has 2. I don't know if we'll be able to identify it. I think it is actually this one here, as we've got the rail here. So if you see the rail, that means it's only 2, but the rest of them will have 3. And that picks it up and puts it into the sorting system that we just took a look at. But all of the XP ends up in the middle and then gets shot up to the player. Now these filters back here, as you know, are rotten flesh. I don't keep rotten flesh, and I find that if you run this farm for an extremely long time, you can find that it overflows just a little bit due to the amount of rotten flesh that you get, because this thing does produce a lot of items. So I found that putting these things in here, although it's a bit overkill having it on all of the sides, does solve the issue. And so that's basically just what that is. And so yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that. I'm going to go ahead and actually give you guys a visual example. If I can correctly get up here. My word, I cannot fly today. And wow. Okay, there we go. So all you have to do is hit a pigman. You could use a snowball or any other kind of projectile if you don't have a bow, but I think the bow is probably more likely the thing you have. You can go ahead and switch on the farm. This will take a couple of seconds to start working, as it just needs to run the rounds as the clock goes, and there you go. As you can see, you immediately start getting XP, and it's perfect. You just sit here, you don't have to be hitting mobs, you can do your enchanting, you can AFK, and it's so rewarding to know that every time you come here, you just saw the lava in action there, every time you come here, if you're just getting XP, you know that you're also getting the quartz and other items that you would like to have. So it's certainly one of my favourite farms. And I'm going to go ahead and hold my pickaxe here just to show you how quickly it can mend a tool, as you're effectively running at the maximum rate that you can pick up XP here. And just like that, we've almost completely filled up our pickaxe. This is so much quicker than going back to the drowned farm. And yeah, this is perfect, guys. So I'm going to turn this thing off. And once you turn it off, you want to make sure that you don't leave immediately, as some of these pistons are still going to be running. And if they are, when you unload the chunks, it is going to potentially, if not almost always, break. Although it doesn't always, you know, it depends on how the chunks unload and where the blocks are when it does it. But the pigman will continue to chase after you, and the items and the XP will stack up. So I do recommend leaving straight away, otherwise you're going to start creating some lag. And they're going to be angry at you for a couple of minutes. So just leave for a little bit, and then when you come back, it's all going to be sorted. Now, one final thing to consider is back here we have these chests. Now obviously you can arrange these however you like, but this is the shulker box storage for the gold nuggets section over here. So you want to fill this up with shulker boxes to fuel this, as it will be filling up quite a few of them. And you can see already, just from that test we did, we got quite a bit here. And this has the similar sort of situation back here, although it is a much smaller storage. I think you'll find that somewhere, it's back here. Yes, these barrels right here are the ones that you would want to fill up for shulker boxes, and it will go in here. As you can see, I don't have many yet, so we're not going to do a big test just yet. And so now I just decided to go ahead and enchant all of my gear, both combining lots of the stuff that I'd collected from the end raiding, as well as crafting and enchanting new pieces, and then also combining things with books, as you do, to try and get myself a max set of gear. I only got one, as I figured if I die, I die, so I don't need a spare set. However, I did make a spare set of boots with Frostwalker, as that can be handy, and then of course also a max set of tools, as well as weapons. I didn't make a crossbow or like various, you know, bows that have mending and not mending. I just made the ones that I use, but I did make a few spare pickaxes, as that's pretty handy. And then here you can see just from this session how much loot I collected from this farm. Unlike the witch farm, it is actually very productive, and in the end I got just under a stack and a half of gold blocks, which is really, really awesome. And then from here I didn't actually have a fully maxed set of gear yet, as I needed to get myself a few books that you wouldn't usually get. So this included getting soul speed, and to do this I just modified the output of one of the bartering things so that I could grab that. And then I also needed to get swift sneak, and this was the sketchier one. Oh, oh, I'm so glad it's raining. Holy crap. And from here there was one more enchantment which I needed, which technically you can get from enchanting, but it's so rare that I find that using villagers and getting the books just makes life so much easier, and that of course is thorns. And so to do this I decided to decimate a village and begin the first bit of slavery in my world, as you do. And just after I did this, I felt compelled to go out and kill some animals just because I felt like taking a break from doing this project, and I came across a pink sheep, which is a super rare mob in Minecraft. I think it's like 1 in 600 sheep or something stupid spawn as a pink sheep. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I leaded him and connected him to this village, and then maybe one day we'll do something with this guy. After this, I spent the night at the witch farm, and I gave it a good proper test to see how many items we can get from it. Oh yes, I'm rich. How has that even happened? Perhaps the filter's broken. Nope, that's a mystery. I did this because I wanted to take advantage of all of the new items we had collected, and as I planned before, I used it in combination with the extra sand I mined to make myself some TNT, because it was time to finally get my hands on some netherite so that I can truly max this gear I just made. So I headed to 00 in the nether and just pretty much randomly guessed a height to work at, which was just a bit above bedrock, and I placed in rows of TNT every other block and then set it off and enjoyed. Finally, I now had all of the netherite I needed, but these days we need smithing templates, so I headed back into the nether and raided some bastions so that I could get exactly that. Plus, I also found a little bit of extra netherite, so it was a very profitable trip. And so all that work we've put into building farms in this episode has come down to this very moment here. I've now got myself a full set of netherite gear, and these farms are going to be very fruitful in the future as well. However, I'm not quite finished today, as there's a couple of things that I want to fix up that I noticed when making the first episode. And first of those two things being is this windmill right here. If you look at the stairs, you can see one goes up to the right and one goes to the left. And if you have OCD, I warn you here. As you can see on this side, one goes to the left and so does the other. This thing has been bugging me so much, so I'm going to finally go ahead and fix this thing. There we go, that's better. And then finally, in the previous episode, I had actually gone and collected up all of these mossy cobblestone and stone brick blocks so that I could add them to this island, but I never got around to it. So what I'm thinking of doing is just adding these in, and then I think I'm going to call it a day.